Even the parliamentary budget officer has said when you take into account all the indirect costs, slightly more Canadians are worse off than better off because of the carbon tax. Again, why are you so ideologically wedded to it that you can't just wait until inflation stabilizes and press pause for a moment?
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Vassy Kapelos interviewed Liberal Minister François-Philippe Champagne today while he was in Washington, D.C. In classic Vassy style, she challenged Champagne to the fact that the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador was revolting against Trudeau on the April 1st carbon tax increase.
Let's take a look.
Okay, understood. I just want to move on then to a domestic issue because you have been also one of the ministerial leads when it comes to the government's agenda to address the cost of living. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, a Liberal, Andrew Furey, is now today calling on your government to pause the increase to the carbon tax slated for April the 1st. Will you consider that?
Listen, I like Premier Furey. I've known him for a long time, but I think we have been very clear that a price on pollution is the right thing to do. It brings more money in the pocket of Canadians. That vision, that approach has been clear from the start. The Prime Minister has been clear. I hear his voice, but I think that, we have a plan to fight climate change. We have been clear with Canadians all along. And honestly, I think that Canadians understand that. The plan is working. It's going to bring more money in the pockets of Canadians. And we're going to continue to do that because you know what? This is an investment in the future. This is an investment that has allowed us also to attract investment in Canada because people see these Canadians are serious about fighting climate change. So I would be happy to engage with Premier Furey. I'll see him soon. But I can tell you we're going to continue to do what's right for the country, not only now, but for the future.
Yeah, so couple things there. I like how Champagne, says that despite the fact that the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is calling for this pause, Champagne is saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Canadians want this. Canadians want to pay taxes." No, that's not what's happening. Why do you think the Premier would be raising this in the first place if the overwhelming majority of the people in his province weren't literally screaming at him to do so? Because obviously, the Liberal MPs in that province aren't doing anything. So they're ignoring them. So they're basically screwed for the next federal election, Liberals. So congratulations. And, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is one of only 2 Liberal premiers in the country. So, he's probably a little worried about the fact that the Conservatives may be coming for his seat on the provincial level.
Well, I imagine there's not going to be any Liberal premiers left after this whole debacle with Trudeau.
Well, it'll be interesting. But to give you a sense of what was going on, the Globe and Mail dropped a story today about this, and this is what it said.
Liberal Premier joins Conservative calls to stop carbon price hike. Canada's only remaining Liberal provincial premier called on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to stop his planned carbon price hike next month, saying its increase would compound the affordability crisis that his constituents and all Canadians are facing. In a letter sent to Mr. Trudeau on Tuesday, Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey asked Prime Minister to rethink his policy in the context of what he called, quote, the most significant cost of living crisis in a generation, end quote.
So even the Liberal Premier is saying, okay, enough is enough. I have to listen to my voters. This needs to stop. And, this just proves that this isn't an ideological perspective that the Conservatives are railing against this. It is an affordability perspective. So this is actually really bad news for Trudeau and the Liberals because not only did he have to capitulate and do a carve-out for the Atlantic provinces when it comes to the carbon tax and home heating oil with the furnaces, he is now having to rail against a Liberal premier now in the Atlantic provinces. Now, Trudeau can just say, well, screw you, I'm not going to worry about that. But here's the problem. he's in a very difficult situation now, because what do you think Pierre Poilievre and the rest of the Conservatives are going to be saying when they get back in the House regarding the carbon tax?
They're going to be saying even your own, well, I suppose they're not Trudeau's people, but like even people of your party, of your ilk, are saying that this tax is ridiculous and Canadians can no longer afford it.
Right. So you have Saskatchewan refusing to collect it at all. You have Ford now actually growing the stones to speak out against it. You have the Newfoundland and Labrador premier now saying this needs to stop. So like this is not going well for the Liberals at all, despite the fact that they're trying to say, well, it puts more money in the hands of Canadians. Listen, if that was actually the case, forget the Conservatives. And forget the Premier of Saskatchewan. If this was actually the case, the Canadians ended up with more money back in their pockets. Number one, they wouldn't have carved it out in the first place as it relates to the home heating oil that the Atlantic Canadians use for their furnaces in the majority of cases. And two, you wouldn't have a Liberal Premier saying, okay, this has to do with affordability. Don't put the increase in on April 1st.
Well, and above and beyond that, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says that the carbon tax costs taxpayers $200 million to administer. So that's the administration costs of the people who are writing the checks, the people who are
processing the payments, like all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. So you have $200 million going just to those people. And you're trying to tell us this is value for money and you're getting more money back. I don't think so. But Vassy didn't stop there.
Minister, though, the Premier's point is that he is not, like you characterize many of your opponents on the carbon tax, against the issue of mitigating climate change, that he takes it very seriously. But at the same time, people in Newfoundland and Labrador and many of the other provinces in which this carbon tax applies are dealing with a high rate of inflation, high interest rates, and he's simply asking your government to pause the increase until interest rates go down and inflation stabilizes. Why won't you at least consider that? Are you so ideologically wedded to it that you can't listen to the premiers who are saying it is adding to the burden of the cost of living for the people who live in their provinces?
Well said.
Great question, especially when she's talking about, are you just ideologically blinded by this? In that you're not going to listen to anything, you're not going to review the facts, you're not going to listen to anybody that's talking common sense to you.
Well, and this is the problem. The Liberals live in la-la land where their ideology drives their policy, and any feedback that they get, it's from haters, it's from racists, bigots, misogynists, etc. And they don't listen to it. They don't listen to the millions of Canadians who are screaming, we cannot afford this. They keep telling us, oh, don't worry, you're getting more money back. Then who's paying for that $200 million to administer this carbon tax program?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because you have this situation where whenever the Conservatives would raise this in the House of Commons, you would have Champagne or any of the other Liberals say, oh, well, you know, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives as it relates to climate change. It's and they call them climate deniers and all this stuff. Okay, well, now you have a Liberal Premier saying, please stop the April 1st increase from going into effect. What are you going to call him? Because from an ideological perspective, he agrees that there's climate change. He agrees that it's being caused by people, but he disagrees with the carbon tax being raised on April 1st. Why? Because of the affordability crisis. So he doesn't buy what you're selling. His government doesn't buy what you're selling as it relates to Canadians getting more money, you know, back than they pay into this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking about this and linking it to affordability in the first place. So this just completely exposes the Liberal charade as it relates to the carbon tax and how it puts more money back in our pockets.
Listen, I understand the issue around cost of living, Vassy. I've been the one with colleagues who have been fighting all along to make sure that life is more affordable for Canadians. I took on, for example, the grocery sector and the big chains to make sure that people can afford grocery. I keep on that fight. I'm going to even bring that at the G7 meeting that I'm going this evening to make sure that we start seeing competition issues, making sure that life is more affordable. I get that. You know, I come from rural Canada. I know that people talk to me. But at the same time, People that I meet in the street understand that we need also to be fighting climate change, that the price on pollution is the best way. It's been tested to make sure that, we have the right framework to make sure that we drive the right behavior, but at the same time, that we send the money back in the pocket of Canadians. So this is a system that it's working, and Canadians understand that.
Respectfully, Minister, do Canadians actually see that it's working? The Auditor General pointed out that your government has not attached a specific emissions reductions target to the price on carbon, that you have not produced evidence. The NDP Premier of Manitoba said the same thing. The people associated with the provincial NDP in both Saskatchewan and Alberta have raised the same concerns. Now your Liberal colleague is also calling into a question exactly what you're trying to argue. Even the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said when you take into account all the indirect costs, slightly more Canadians are worse off than better off because of the carbon tax. Again, why are you so ideologically wedded to it that you can't just wait until inflation stabilizes and press pause for a moment?
Get him.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? You now have mainstream media. Now, I think most of us give Vassy a pass for mainstream media because she calls it like it is on both sides.
She slaughters liberals and conservatives alike.
Yeah, and so she should.
That's her job.
Absolutely. As much as she is challenging Champagne here, as much as she has challenged Freeland, she also needs to challenge Pierre and Lanceman and the rest of them. That's how you hold your government to account in a democracy. This is textbook. All of the rest of the journalists and all of the rest of the media anchors around there, you need to be taking notes from Vassy Kapelos. In my opinion, she's one of the best because she doesn't care who you are. She gives you a hard time, as she's supposed to. Now, as it relates to Champagne, this is like one of the first times I've heard mainstream media debunk the 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off. She literally just said, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, this is what Pierre has been quoting everybody. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said that more Canadians are worse off because of the carbon tax.
This is where we got the chart from.
Right. And we've been saying this for months since Pierre first told us about it when he stared into the camera and said, Google it, look it up.
I encourage them to Google a distributional analysis of the federal fuel charge on the 2030 emissions reduction plan. Page 3. If you're out there watching, Google it now. You will see the Prime Minister is deliberately misinforming the House of Commons by stating that Canadians will be better off when clearly the average household will pay more than $1,500 more in taxes than they get back.
And so we did.
And that's where we got the chart, as Fox said. And so she's like, sorry, this doesn't wash. You're saying, oh, I know it's the best way to fight climate change. Based on what? You have no evidence. And this was the talking point that Gibault tried to bring up amazingly when he said, oh, in committee, see, there's no evidence that it doesn't that it doesn't not fight climate change. Yeah, well, there is no evidence that it does fight climate change.
Yeah, because they haven't done any studies. So, I mean, that's like me saying, there's no mice in my garage because I haven't gone to look for them.
No, well, there's no
there's no evidence of mice in my garage because I haven't opened up the garage to actually go look.
Right. So you can't say there is or there is not mice. Over and above that, the problem is you look at the overall targets of the Liberals, they haven't hit a single target. They've hit it once. When? During the pandemic, when everybody was locked down. So, places of work weren't online as much, factories weren't working as much, and you had less cars on the road, so less pollution overall. So that was the only time that they actually hit their target, was in 2020. So this is a great follow-up question by Vassy. I was saying to Fox as this was going on, I'm like, when she kind of interjected her, I said, I think she's going to say respectfully, which means she's continuing on and not taking his crap.
Listen, it's not about ideology. It's about the planet. Vassy, I'd say that the fact that we have a plan to fight climate change has brought billions of investment in this country. People understand, we set ourselves to be the green supply of choice to the world, whether it's green aluminum, green steel, green batteries, green semiconductor. That's what we're known for. This has attracted investment and make sure that we position Canada as a leader in the world And decarbonizing industries is a trend. Look in Alberta. We have Heidelberg, for example. We're going to have the first green cement plant in the world. Dow Chemical decided to put their plant in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. Why? Because they want to have the greenest polyethylene plant in the world. So that system is working. It's bringing money in the pockets of Canadians. And I think the vast majority of Canadians agree that we need to keep on and fighting climate change. It's the right thing to do for the planet. It's the right thing to do for our kids. And we can do it in a sensible way, making sure that we drive the right behavior that gives money back in the pockets of Canadians. I respect my colleagues. You know, I talk with all the premiers in Canada, for sure. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we take the right decision for now, but also for the future of this nation.
I swear, I when he said the vast majority of Canadians agree, she was so gobsmacked the fact that he would say that.
God bless Vassy, because I think she's trying very, very hard to stay like neutral and not show what she's thinking on her face, but it's creeping out just a little bit, and you can tell she's just disgusted with what he's saying.
Right? Well, because he's straight out lying.
Yeah, because Canadians are suffering, bottom line. And again, the Liberals are telling us how great we have it and how we're, meeting all these targets and how everything's going according to plan. And Canadians, you don't have it as bad as you think you do.
Well, and the fact is that, so the Canadian Taxpayers Federation did a poll, right? And 70% of Canadians oppose the carbon tax. 70%. Specifically, the hike on April 1st.
Well, and this is important because of those 70%, I imagine many of them voted Liberal in the last election. Now, whether you did so thinking that something different would happen, whether you did so kind of ignorantly, not really knowing what to expect, just pay attention, because these votes are what got us here. And that's not to cast shade on anybody, but just pay attention in the next election to make sure we don't repeat these same mistakes.
Well, and this is probably why Vassy's, like her head almost fell off her neck when he said that. Like, you can see her drop her head, because he's saying the vast majority of Canadians, like 70, like, this just shows how much they outright lie about this, or how much they are completely out of touch. And it's probably both. Because the fact that the data shows the exact opposite. The vast majority of Canadians are against this. Champagne, you're out to lunch.
Just very quickly, Minister, you're standing in Washington, D.C. Your government has hailed the climate policy of this White House administration as incredibly serious. It is also attracting the investment that you talk about, and it is doing so without a consumer carbon tax. Again, why not consider?
Well, I would say what has been attracting investment in Canada is the talent of our people. It's the ecosystem we have, whether it's the aerospace industry and the natural resources. And I was just in Calgary a few days ago. It's the critical minerals we have and the proximity. Well, listen, I think that, there's different things in the sense they see that we are serious on fighting climate change.
All right, I got to stop him.
Wow.
I got to stop him because she's right. Like, he was like, oh, well, they're investing because of the carbon tax and we're serious on... And then she's like, well... You're in Washington. One of the reasons why you're in Washington is the U.S. has all of these subsidies for, clean energy or clean industry. And because of all these subsidies, they're seeing a lot of investments coming to the United States. A lot of businesses are doing it, and they're bypassing Canada. And he's saying, well, people are coming to Canada because of our talents and because of all this and blah, blah, blah. And Vassy's like, well, I thought it was the carbon tax. Well, it's a lot of things. Like, he just got destroyed. Just destroyed on his own argument. And this is the problem. This is what happens, folks. We've talked about this before. When you retreat into absurdity and you pick a hill that you're going to die on, no matter what, when it relates to the argument, no matter what facts are presented towards you, only one thing is going to happen. You end up looking like Mr. Champagne here. But here's the good news, folks. The fact that we are starting to see these ideological links break, even within, liberal ideology, doesn't matter if they're not in the federal government. This is key because you have a liberal premier railing against the liberal federal government, and that completely legitimizes the concerns that the Conservatives have raised across the board here. So this is just one more card that is falling from the Liberal House of Cards. And you get the feeling it may not be long now.